Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, so if all your friends jumped out of an airplane in an attempt to expose the identities of undercover DEA agents, would you just go along? This is Drop Zone. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Drop Zone, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you?
You know, it's a weird time of year. I just recently finished some big, worrisome tasks that were hanging over my head, which included filing taxes earlier this week.
Oh, boy.
But somehow, I can't shake the idea that something is still looming out there over me. Like either I'm going to figure out that it was nothing and it's just the residual worry about taxes, or I'm about to get clobbered by something huge that I forgot to deal with.
I mean, I don't want to be a downer, but I just feel like everyone's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop on humanity in general.
It could just be that, yeah. I keep seeing those little Twitter clips of like, what would you do? And a giant asteroid is smashing into the earth, and those don't help with your peace of mind either.
The answer is a vote. Get out to the polls.
Please, get out there.
Yeah, it's fully spring now. The birds are chirping.
Nice.
The flowers are blooming. I planted a Japanese maple tree last year, and it's getting some leaves for the first time. It's exciting.
Oh, that's a success story. How nice.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because it didn't grow much, but I guess it was just laying down roots.
Okay.
It's looking quite healthy so far, so that's exciting. Got some raspberries coming in, which the squirrels and chipmunks will just eat. And
Oh, I'm sure they'll love that.
just have a bare, thorny bush. It's great. It's what everybody wants.
And a family of happy squirrels, so like it's a trade-off.
The squirrels is fine. I don't want the chipmunks. They fuck up your foundation, I guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned that last spring, that you started to have worries about them getting into your house.
Sorry, I'm going to have to shoot them all. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to shoot them. I'm just going to ask them politely to leave.
Sir?
So
Sir?
did you, excuse me, get mauled by a chipmunk? That'd be the cutest mauling ever. What did you watch this week, Ian? What do you got? We didn't discuss this at all beforehand, so I'm really going to be surprised when you tell me what you're bringing this week.
Yeah, I'm winging one out of left field. I watched Game Night.
Oh, fun.
2018 movie. Super fun. And unbeknownst to me, it's super topical. It's directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, who just put out this new Dungeons & Dragons movie that everyone is saying is also really fun and cool.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
I didn't either. I just was like, let me see what I'm going to say about this movie. I'm like, oh, I'm smart. I did a topical movie. But this is Game Night. It's from 5 years ago. Really good. Great cast.
Yeah.
Got Jason Bateman, Rachel McAdams, your boy Kyle Chandler.
My other boy, Lamorne Morris from New Girl.
Yes. And it's a really fun comedy, and it plays a lot on tension, on emotional tension. And because of that, I can't help comparing it to last week's movie, The Cable Guy, because this movie creates all these moments of just really intense social discomfort and other kinds of discomfort. And yet this movie succeeds. It's actually more uncomfortable than The Cable Guy, but also more enjoyable. There's tons of these, oh my God, no kind of moments that turn into laugh out loud moments. And it's just super fun. And it has a creepy guy, the neighbor.
If you didn't call him out by name, I was going to have to.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons is awesome in this. And he shows you like, okay, this is how you do a creep who really makes you uncomfortable when he tries to invite himself into things. And it's very hard to tell him no. It's kind of like the same thing we're talking about with Cable Guy, but like he just pulled it off really well. And it's so funny because I tried watching this movie a while back because obviously I was like, hey, I love all these comedy actors and I heard good things. And I think I stopped the movie. Like I bailed out really early because Jesse Plemons made me so uncomfortable that I'm like, I can't take this movie. And this time I stuck it out and I loved it.
Oh, whenever I'm at the grocery store and there's a sale, I always like to point at it and be like, how is this profitable for Frito-Lay?
Yes.
Because that's just one of my all-time favorite line readings.
Killer line.
Yeah, but I know I'm a big Game Night fan. I saw it not in theaters, but pretty soon after it came to home media streaming or whatever. And it's so rare to get like a comedy that's rated R, has this kind of budget, is smart and well done, and not just like a gross out comedy. Like it's high concept. I think we all kind of got used to this idea that R-rated comedies were like 80% ad-libbed and it was just like the same 8 actors kind of recirculating roles.
Yeah.
I enjoy a lot of those movies. You know the ones of which I speak. But
yeah, it worked.
It worked, but it was just so refreshing to have that. And even Tag, to a lesser extent, I don't think it's as successful as a movie, but it kind of also high concept, these kind of new faces in these type of roles, and just R-rated good comedy for adults. Like they both kind of scratch scratch that itch. And then that genre kind of disappeared again theatrically. You know, like those movies still get made, but a lot of them just go to Netflix. So.
Yeah. Well, now I'm even more excited to see Dungeons and Dragons now that I know that these guys are behind both and how good they are at doing high-spirited comedy.
I know John Francis Daley Moore as an actor. He was on Freaks and Geeks.
Yep.
Yeah, and Waiting. So you went back 5 years. I went back 5 days.
Oh.
We're recording this on Friday. And on Sunday night, the final season of Barry premiered.
Ooh.
Now, what's your current situation with Barry? I know you've checked it out, but did you bail early?
I think I got through the first season and I may have even started season 2 and I loved it. It was one of those things where I loved it so much that I never watched it again.
Right.
Like you said last week about Snowfall, I'm intending to go back to it at some point. I just haven't mustered the energy for the big run.
It's so wild to me that this show, when it originally premiered, was considered like adventurous and groundbreaking and super interesting and how it melded genres and dealt with, you know, some surreal, like, but the version of Barry that we all saw in season 1 is so much more like linear and generic than what we're getting now. Like, he's really swinging for the fences and trying to make his singular vision appear on screen, and it's working.
Wow.
I think season 3 was when I really started to notice that, like, he's really taking some narrative chances. And when I say he, I mean Hader, because it's really his baby. He writes it. He did a lot of directing, I believe. He's the star, obviously. But they dropped 2 episodes for the premiere. The first one is just really leans hard into surrealism and what's reality, what's Barry's just diseased mind conjuring. And then the second episode is a lot more of a standard Barry episode. There's some great jokes from NoHo Hank, and it's just a great time. There's still tragedy, obviously, because it's Barry, and something sad has to happen in every episode. But I was laughing my ass off in the second episode.
Wow.
And I'm just really excited to see where the season takes us. There's so much good TV on again right now. Snowfall wrapped up. I know we have some listeners that are also Snowfall fans because they reached out to me. And I do want to say, without spoiling anything, I love the ending.
Cool.
I think it was poignant and considered and not Hollywood.
Nice.
As much as a lot of the show was stylized and kind of Hollywood, the finale was brave and how understated it was. I really dug it. And I'm toying with the idea of just watching the whole series over again because it's been so long since I've seen seasons 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because the show really left a mark on me. But we're not here to talk about Snowfall or Barry or even Game Night. We're here to talk about Drop Zone. I think you hinted at this, but you never even really heard of this movie before we started talking about it for the pod, right?
I don't think I did. I was around in the 90s. I know that I knew about Point Break, I knew about Die Hard, and I knew about Passenger 57. But what I did not know is that those 3 movies had a baby, and that baby was named Drop Zone.
I like that. Passenger 57. Wow, you're bringing me back. That's another one I kind of forgot about.
Yeah.
Drop Zone was an important part of my childhood.
Really?
In the way that so many movies we talk about on here are. Me and my sister were latchkey kids, so the illegal cable box that had HBO was our babysitter a lot of the time, and Drop Zone was on HBO a hell of a lot in the 90s.
Okay.
So it was just a constant fixture in our house. We watched it all the time. It's not a movie for children. I was 8 when this movie came out, so probably 9 by the time it came to HBO. Certainly not old enough to be watching Drop Zone. Like, this movie gets pretty gnarly with the violence, especially towards the end.
It does, but it has so much of a sweeter disposition, and that's probably like a lot of what we'll talk about. Like, being left alone with this versus like Lethal Weapon, you're so much better off. Like, this movie,
natural born killers.
Yeah, you could be seriously traumatized and turned into a cable guy, into a Chip Douglas if you weren't careful. But this movie, Wesley Snipes is in there and he's keeping it real, man. He's just shepherding you through. He's like, yeah, I know a lot of bad shit's going down, but look, I'm just dealing with it like the rest of you guys are. And it gives you some strength.
I had this as a note, but it's probably better to just talk about when we're talking about the movie as a whole. I kind of forgot how funny Wesley Snipes could be. You know, like, everyone remembers Major League. When he's in a pure comedy, he's obviously capable of being funny, but he brings like a lot of swagger to this role that could have just been a stoic, by the book, you know, U.S. Marshal. He's silly. Like, he's a little bit of a ragtag U.S. Marshal. Obviously good at his job, but like, he's looking at it like, he looks at the audience like, you believe this shit?
I just applaud the choices and the energy that he brought to this role because, like you're saying, you could be very self-serious in a role like this. Not only is he like a badass U.S. Marshal, but he's traumatized by the loss of his brother. It's like a guy with a real revenge agenda and tragedy. So like, you could bear a lot of heaviness into this role. And there's times where he exercises that and he gets his revenge. He uses his Shotokan karate black belt when he needs it.
Snipes a legit badass.
Yeah, he is, which is great. It makes him a great action hero. But the fact that, yeah, he can just be like rolling with the punches and just experiencing what the character is experiencing, which a lot of times is kind of ridiculous because it's a high action 90s action movie based on a funny extreme sports genre. So it's kind of ridiculous, and he kind of knows it and he rolls with it in a way that's really beautiful.
And there's like these montages that in other movies would be about the protagonist and the hero like training at the gun range or like lifting weights, getting ready. But these are just like Wesley Snipes like falling. Like as much as like a serious this movie is, and there's real life or death stakes to everything that happens in it, it's 40% a comedy.
Yeah.
It's just so lighthearted most of the time. I really liked it. I was nervous. I was really nervous to rewatch this because, like I said, I loved it as a kid and I thought that was just nostalgia glasses. But then I found out that you also liked it, so I felt better about it.
I did. And I found myself noting many of the same mistakes that we note in other movies that we don't like. And we spend a lot of time grinding on them for their fucking this and that up. And the motivations are dumb here. And this plot point doesn't make sense. This movie makes its share of those kind of loosely constructed moments, but you just keep forgiving it because it's just kind of fun. And it's not amazing. Like I would tell people, don't go into this expecting it's going to blow you away. It's very light. It's very silly and exactly the way the premise would make you think it's going to be. But it's just, I don't know, it's just pleasant. It's like the filmmakers as a whole, between the actors and the writers and the director, like they just decided not to give you a hard time. They just decided to like, let's make this fun. Okay, it's just a movie. And you go, oh, that was fun.
You want me to talk a little bit about where this movie came from?
Yeah, let's hear about how this thing happened.
All right. Extreme sports were all the rage in the 90s. Surfing, skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding, rollerblading, BMX biking, and of course, skydiving. Why do so many extreme sports start with S?
Seriously, they should have called them the S Games, am I right? No?
Two professional skydivers, Tony Griffin and Guy Manos, had a concept for a Hollywood action movie about a team of evil skydivers doing crime, while a group of nice skydivers try to stop them. It's more complicated than that, but you get the gist. As they weren't screenwriters themselves, Griffin and Manos turned to Peter Barsacchini, who had gotten his start as a music journalist for the San Mateo Times. Barsacchini turned in his script, which included a deputy U.S. Marshal protagonist seeking revenge for his murdered brother. Now titled Drop Zone, the lead part was offered to Steven Seagal for a reported salary of $15 million, and holy shit, thank God he said no. This movie would have been so much worse.
Yeah, I mean, a movie like this is hard to kill, but it certainly would have been under siege.
John Bishop was brought in to do some rewrites to the script, and reliable Hollywood hand John Badham was brought in to direct. Wesley Snipes was eventually signed to star, and Gary Busey was cast as big bad ex-DEA agent turned rapscallion Ty Moncrief after Andy Garcia turned the role down. Yancy Butler joined the cast as instructor/co-lead Jess Crossman after Ellen Barkin was considered first. Paramount Pictures would approve a $45 million budget, and filming would begin in March 1994 in such diverse locations as Florida, Washington, D.C., and Woodland Hills, California.
Fun fact, Woodland Hills contains neither woodlands nor hills.
Paramount and Badham suddenly found themselves in a race against the clock, though, as Buena Vista was releasing the Charlie Sheen vehicle Terminal Velocity, another skydiving action movie, in September of 1994. Drop Zone wouldn't beat Terminal Velocity to theaters, but it wouldn't matter as Terminal Velocity bombed super hard.
Winning.
Drop Zone would land in theaters on December 9th, 1994, with critics mostly hating it and audiences mostly ignoring it, as it debuted in third place with only $6.1 million. It would eventually earn $29 million in North America and $62 million worldwide, not nearly enough to recoup its $45 million budget. But, much like we did for Semi-Pro, where after our episode came out and we were like, hey, everyone says this movie's bad. Actually, it's not. And then it shot to the top of the streaming charts. I think it was number one for something like 1,000 weeks consecutively on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. That happens.
I feel like we could do that for Drop Zone.
Yeah.
Get the Blast Zone bump.
The Blast Zone effect. It's funny. I was thinking what happens when you bring a Drop Zone into the Blast Zone. It's a zone inside of a zone.
Zoneception. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be a matter-antimatter type of thing, but let's hope we don't explode.
Or implode. I feel like we could implode if there's too many zones.
It's a little scary. We're on the edge here. But it's funny that you pointed out this is a twin film. Like I looked up the idea of twin films. I guess this is a lesser known one because both, what was the other one called? Terminal Velocity?
Terminal Velocity, yeah.
Yeah.
The Charlie Sheen one.
I feel like maybe I knew that one existed more than I knew that this one existed.
Oh, really?
But it made me think of some of the other big phenomena like that of the 90s, which Dante's Peak and Volcano really stood out.
Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Exactly. Those were the two big ones. And it turns out when you look it up, this has been happening in the movie industry since the beginning. It's not really a 90s phenomenon, but that's where I became aware of it. And those two instances of it really impressed it into the public consciousness, I think. And then
we're getting Ants in a Bug's Life, you're going to say?
Ants in a Bug's Life was
that's
also
a good one.
That was 98 too. So the 90s had just a bunch of those examples where people are like, what the fuck is the movie industry doing? What's going on?
We're going to get that again this year with Oppenheimer and Barbie.
Oh, yes.
So
strikingly similar.
Twin films, very similar subject matter. We're not doing Terminal Velocity next week, but maybe we should have planned it where we could do a couple twin. How rare is it to find two twin films that both bombed? We could have made a thing out of it, but no, we have other things on the agenda for next week because it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, a little bit.
So do you want to walk through the story of this movie?
Yeah. Let's jump right in. Pete Nessip, played by Wesley Snipes, is a U.S. Marshal, and so is his brother, Terry, played by Malcolm Jamal Warner. While escorting a notorious computer hacker named Earl Leedy, played by Michael Jeter, their 747 is hijacked by a group claiming to be terrorists. There's an explosion, and Terry is killed, but the hijackers manage to grab Leedy and parachute out of the damaged plane. Back on the ground, nobody believes Pete that the hijacking was actually a prison break. They say it's impossible to skydive from a 747, and they take away Pete's badge while the matter is being investigated. But Pete won't quit. Following a tip, he goes to meet a champion skydiver named Jess Crossman, played by Yancy Butler. Jess gives Pete an unexpected crash course in parachuting and agrees to help him penetrate the world of elite skydivers in exchange for him sponsoring her team in a big event coming up July 4th in Washington, D.C.
Well done as always. I did have one nit to pick with you.
Okay.
I think once you hijack a 747, you're no longer claiming to be terrorists, whatever your true agenda. I think you've crossed over solidly into terrorist neighborhood.
That's true. They are terrorists regardless of what they call themselves. But the setup of this whole skyjacking / prison break thing is pretty sophisticated. There's a lot packed in there, but they move through it real quickly. Like they name drop this terrorist organization that they claim to be from, but I forgot what they called themselves, but they're not that. But then a lot of details happen that explain why nobody believes Pete. He's like, I saw them parachute out of the plane with my prisoner who I was escorting. And they're like, yeah, don't be ridiculous. We found a burned body. And it's like, wait, how did you find a burned body? The plane didn't burn. It landed. It had its back hatch blown open and some people flew out. But there's a lot of details that they threw in there and they kind of didn't really ground them in stuff we saw happening on screen.
Yeah. And to your point about, but I saw a burned body, like the incredulous cop is such a recurring theme in this movie. The cops just, you could tell them the most generic story. They'd be like, are you out of your mind? Like that type of stuff doesn't happen here. Look, I just saw somebody like get in a car crash. Like car crash? Get your head out of the clouds, man.
It's parachuting out of a 747. Like everybody but Pete Nessip knows for goddamn certain that is impossible. No one's ever done it. No one's ever going to do it. And you are dangerously crazy if you start to entertain ideas like that, son.
I love it. When did all these cops just become like experts in skydiving? Like skydiving on a 747, you must be out your goddamn mind. I'm like, fuck do you know? You've been skydiving recently? Like you're 73 years old and 60 pounds overweight.
And his boss has to take his gun and his badge just because, sorry, dude, that's the way it works in cop movies. You're now the outsider cop. You have to work the rest of this film on your own. But it works to set him up with like, let him be a lone wolf the rest of the time.
His boss is like, hey, you said some real stupid shit back there. I got to fucking suspend you now.
Yeah.
Their explanation for suspending him is like, I don't know. We think your brother might have done something stupid. So you're suspended. It's like, what? Why?
Like, they don't, again, they kind of hand wave. He's like, you know the rules. And he's like, yeah, you're right.
But we don't know the rules. Maybe Pete Nessip does. By the way, did you catch Nessip? What's notable about that name?
No.
It's an anagram for Snipes.
Oh, damn. That is great. I love the movie 10% more now.
Right?
Just because that's so dumb.
Every little thing we uncover. Yeah. It's so like, it's like something you would do when you were making your first film. Like everyone involved in this has been in Hollywood for like 30 years at this point.
That is super dumb. No, but you said like all these middle-aged, overweight cops have strong opinions about skydiving. And you're like, that doesn't even seem plausible until you get to the skydiver's bar where they all hang out. And they're all overweight, middle-aged dudes. Cute, big around the middle, soft everywhere, balding, scruffy looking, wearing...
Who are you calling scruffy looking?
This gang of guys that like, there's this great setup where it's Pete thinks he's going to infiltrate this world and investigate things. And like, nah, it's not going to work, buddy. You don't fit in with the skydivers. They'll never accept you. And the skydivers is a bunch of plumbers in bright neon green Adidas tracksuits. And they rough him up and he roughs them up and they settle it with some beers. But
every skydiver in this movie looks like BTK. Yeah, just a bunch of little Dennis Raiders running around. It's fucking weird.
It's so weird.
That look.
And yet it's written by real skydivers. So I'm like, wait, is this really the world of skydiving? Or was the casting weird? It's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny.
Because you would expect to see some like hippie dropout types, of which there is one, and we'll get to him later. The kind of nutty guy that they have to bring back into the fold.
He's underdeveloped. I thought we could have used some more backstory there. He went sky crazy. I don't know. Yeah. That sounds like a thing they'd make up for a movie, right? Like people say, like if you spend too much time underwater, you get what's the sky version of the bends? Like,
I think that's what he got. Now he's sleeping on a window washer platform because he only feels comfortable dangling in the sky. We'll get to him. What's his name? We'll come back to him when we...
Swoop.
Swoop, thank you, yeah.
Swoop.
He's the icon for not being accepted into skydiver world for Pete. And so it comes around at the end when he finally gets his full buy-in. But yeah, like a lot of the archetypes are familiar, but that scene where it's like it's a full-on Top Gun kind of bar where like, oops, you walked into the Navy bar, you're about to get your ass kicked, but it's plumbers and tracksuits. And it's good for a laugh.
They have nothing to fear on the land because they know the sky. I feel like one of them would have that like tattooed on their back. You know,
yeah.
But then let's talk about Jess. Yeah. Jess Crossman, played by Yancy Butler. Full disclosure, I had such a crush on Yancy Butler because of this movie as a kid. Total babe. And then she played Witchblade later. That's not helping.
I don't know Witchblade.
But you don't know, it was like Image Comics maybe? It was like one of those adult comics. Not like a porno.
No.
But like Titties was out, but she played her in a TV movie and then in a show.
Neat.
I really like this character. She's got real Linda Hamilton energy, I thought, in this role. She's a badass. She's fiery. She's like sometimes a little irrational, but I feel like that's not a flaw because they set it up. Like everyone who's like, Jess Crossman's fucking insane. Don't go work with her. So then when she does some insane shit, you're like, this isn't just like a bad character choice. This was kind of telegraphed.
Yeah. She's got the Linda Hamilton deltoids as well. And also shades of maybe Angelina Jolie, who just played a crazy girl in a tank top in what was that? What was the firefighter movie?
Oh, Those Who Wish Me Dead.
Yeah. I feel like it's an archetype and these fine actresses have handed it down over the generations.
Oh yeah. Jolie's a real Jess Crossman in that movie now that I think about it.
Yeah.
She's been like exiled to the Watchtower.
Okay.
Oh, you never finished it, right?
I didn't. I was put off by some of the style of that movie, but I picked up on that kind of character. And yeah, Yancy Butler is fun. I guess I didn't really know her from other stuff, but she does. She brings a good energy and it matches. She's kind of this hard driving woman, but she also matches Wesley Snipes' lighthearted kind of silliness. Like even when both of them take hard positions in scenes or do crazy things, they're kind of both kind of chuckling through it. And so it works. Their energy matches each other nicely.
Oh, she's Joe Butler's daughter, the drummer and singer for the Lovin' Spoonful.
Oh, weird. Cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the reason you probably don't know Yancy Butler that well is because she's not quite Jan Michael Vincent, but she's not a model citizen either.
Okay.
She's had some DUIs, some car crash accidents, things, and some struggles. So she's probably wasn't hired as much as she might have been otherwise.
I see.
If that wasn't the case. But we'll talk more about her career and where it went towards the end of the episode. But yeah, I was really impressed with this character at a time when it felt like, 1994 was not exactly the height of representation for strong women in cinema.
This was a well done one. And we talk about her craziness and how Jess's level of crazy and Pete's level of crazy bounce off each other in a nice way. The signature move of them getting to know each other when they first meet is she throws him out of a plane with no parachute.
A fucking airplane.
Which is pretty extreme for a girl she's on parole, right? She's worried about him being a cop because he's going to bust her and send her back to jail. And yet she throws him out of a plane. And then, of course, she rescues him. She dives after him and hooks up and they parachute down together. But did she really need to add attempted murder of a federal law enforcement officer to the leverage he already had over her?
There's a lot of people angling their bodies to go like chase somebody else who just either fell out of a plane or was thrown from a plane. Doesn't have a parachute. Shit stresses me out, man. I don't know if that's even plausible in real life, but I assume it is.
If you can do that,
they're way more skilled than I would expect. But no, but he's not. He's not there about her parole. He's a deputy U.S. Marshal.
Yeah.
Much like our friend, Raylan Givens.
Oh, my goodness.
I wonder if anybody from this movie may have appeared in Raylan Givens' TV show. Oh, yeah. A big one. It's the Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
Oh, shit.
The boy, Mickey Jones, plays Deuce, the driver of the evil skydiver gang. The getaway guy. He's not jumping out of any planes. He was Hot Rod Dunham in Justified. Big time weed dealer from Nashville.
Okay.
Who does some work with our faves. And he looks exactly the fucking same in 1994 as he did in 2010. I don't know what this he looks like 60 in this movie and he looks 60 now and he's like 80.
Yeah. He's a face for anyone who doesn't watch Justified or doesn't recognize that name. If you Google him, you will instantly know this guy's face. He's been in a million
He's been in
things.
Everything.
Yeah.
He also, I think, is one of the members of ZZ Top.
He's that kind of guy. He's got the big, long, frizzy beard. He's played like a million tough guys and bikers and hard hats and just everything.
Yep.
Great character actor.
Good old Mickey. All right. Was there anything else from the first section we need to go over?
No. Let's soar on over to Act 2.
Oh, boy. Oh,
that was a real strain, that one. I think I hurt myself.
While Pete is learning the ropes of jumping from planes, so is the escaped computer hacker Leedy. Leedy's being trained by the gang that freed him, led by an ex-DEA agent named Ty Moncrief, played by Gary Busey. Ty's gang also includes Jesse's ex-boyfriend, Don Jagger, until Moncrief learns that Jagger's identity may have been compromised by a witness to the hijacking. To keep his operation secret, Moncrief kills Jagger by pushing him into some power lines on their next training jump. Moncrief's big scheme is to parachute into the DEA, hack their computers, steal the names of all their undercover agents, and sell them to a drug kingpin for millions. He and the gang even pull off a mini version of their heist in the local police department just to prove they can do it. Meanwhile, as Pete trains with Jess for the DC event, he starts to pick up clues leading him closer to Ty's gang and the big heist they have planned. And when Jess learns that Ty was behind her ex's death, she's all in on helping Pete to stop him.
Good development here. There's room for set pieces on both sides. On the good guy's side, Pete is training and learning how to jump.
This is when that montage I mentioned would be happening, yeah.
A lighthearted montage on that side. And then on the bad jumper side, they do a full-on set piece that's like a practice version of what it means to do their final heist. And they pull it off, and there's a lot of tension, and it works logically in the plot. This is how they prove to the big kingpin that, look, we can actually do this. I thought that was some pretty successful plotting for the second act.
This is like a really successful middle section because putting on my writing an essay in 7th grade hat, it bridges the first act and the third act perfectly. It pays off some stuff that was set up in the first act, but it also sets up more stuff to be paid off in the third act. It's just a well-constructed, by-the-books action movie.
And we get to spend more time here. We decided to talk about the guys on the bad guy side in this act, the hacker, played by Michael Jeter, and also Gary Busey as Ty, the big bad guy. So let's get into them because they're both interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Leedy as a character.
Yeah.
I find him whiny and annoying. He likes cats. I thought that would endear me to him, but then I was like, he likes cats too much. It's weird. No longer a fan. And he's like, Michael Jeter's playing the role as written, I'm sure. He's just too good at being kind of like a little whiny bitch.
He is. Half of the movie, he doesn't have a personality except for screaming things like, no, I'm not ready, and I can't, and I am now. There's a lot of just shrieking and complaining, which is unfortunate because he's this really powerful character, right? He is such a good hacker that these guys can just kidnap him and point him at a computer and magic happens, right? Like, so it would be interesting if they would have polished up who this guy is and given him a little bit more strong, competent qualities. But I also felt like this is maybe a point in the real world and popular culture where the archetypes for what a hacker mastermind looks like hadn't quite updated to what we think they are today. Like, they basically cast this character like he's a mafia accountant, right? He's a little nebbish of a guy who's very whiny and just wants to be left alone. And we, in the modern age, we think our computer hackers are like young people who are too cool for school.
Hugh Jackman with frosted blonde tips.
Yes, exactly.
Who are you taking in a hack off? Leedy or Stanley Jobson?
Ooh, I don't know.
Does Stanley have his wine? Stanley's got his wine. I'm taking him.
If he can find the right Chardonnay, I think he could pretty much do anything.
It's like playoff LeBron. Stanley Jobson with wine. He's unstoppable.
But you kind of expect it in these 90s action movies that the bad guys, there's somebody who's just whining all the time because it's kind of obligatory. But the guy who's making him whine much of the time, we love him. It's Gary Busey as just a classic baddie.
Our man's back. After only a few short weeks away from the blast zone, he couldn't wait anymore. I really like Ty Moncrief as a villain because he doesn't come off as like a sadist. His motivation is money, and he's certainly ruthless in the pursuit of it, but he doesn't seem to enjoy hurting people necessarily. He doesn't seem to mind it either. He's just like very pragmatic. You saw me, now you got to die. Like, you got spotted by a witness, I got to kill you. Like, he just leaves emotion out of the equation at all times.
And Gary Busey brings so much energy behind his eyes to every scene, and he knows that. Like, he's in his prime here, so like he doesn't have a ton of big lines, like you're saying. He's not grandstanding, he's not doing crazy monologues, and so he plays it kind of reserved for Gary Busey, but somehow that confidence it was actually like comforting. It was like, oh shit, the bad guy knows what he's doing. This movie's going to go okay because the bad guy is not ridiculous.
Right. He never really makes a huge mistake. He's competent at all times.
Yeah.
And I was shocked to find out he's 50 when this movie was made, which
damn,
he looks good for 50. Like,
he does.
Yeah, I agree. This is like Gary in his prime. He had tapped into his persona, what he was going to be to most people. It's kind of wild man, unpredictable, but he was still starring in serious movies and being taken seriously as an actor, which is the sweet spot. But with those type of actors, I feel like that sweet spot can't last forever. Eventually, you just kind of veer into self-parody.
Exactly. Everybody becomes a parody of themselves at some point. And in this movie, he's not. He's just cruising in it, man. He's like a well-oiled machine. But he also, like, I think he's picked up that same energy. There was good energy on the set, man, because all the actors just feel comfortable to do their thing. It's a good sign.
Absolutely. We do get a lot of good skydiving scenes in this section.
Yes.
So Much like we said during the other Busey movie, which is like, it must be really hard to film these surfing scenes and make plot things happen while you're surfing. Like, these guys are doing that while they're jumping out of a fucking airplane. And like,
in the sky,
they're jumping out of these airplanes. These are not, there's no green screen there. There's a little bit of green screen for super close-ups, but
yes,
for these wide shots, they are doing these very complicated skydiving routines and actually like nailing them. And Michael Jeter told the insurance company to go fuck themselves, and he jumped out of the plane himself.
Oh, okay. So he's really there. No one else is. That's the only weak points is when they have to do a close-up on Wesley Snipes or on Gary Busey. You're like, okay, that looks bad for a second. But
yeah.
But other than that,
it's a minor thing though. It comes and goes so fast. Like,
it goes so fast, and the other footage looks so good. We've talked about a bunch of movies that felt like they were older, just partly because of the look or the feel or the content. This movie looks newer than it is. Like the footage throughout, it's a really clean, beautifully, sharply filmed movie. And somehow when they get in the sky, it's even sharper. It's cleaner. The footage is gorgeous. I'm like, how are they doing this in 94? It's really nice. So apart from the good vibes that all these other actors and characters bring, the action in the sky is just a real pleasure to watch.
It might actually be in the third act, but there's a scene where Swoop, what do they call it, gift wraps somebody? Like he floats in front of him and then lets his chute go. So it flies into this guy's face and then like pops his emergency chute, his backup chute. And like they actually did that to a person and like to film this scene. I didn't know shit like that really happened. I thought you jump out of the plane, you're terrified for 20 seconds, you pull the thing and you land. Like I didn't know people were doing all that up there.
Yeah, that's the good part of like, hey, okay, we're letting you into the world of skydivers, and it definitely feels like a real thing. And you're like, okay, it was
treated like everyone's like, oh man, he got gift wrapped. Like
he gift wrapped him. Yeah,
we've seen it 1,000 times. You know,
the teabagging in the sky, and it
really is.
It was executed very nicely.
I think another thing along the lines of what you're saying, and this is not necessarily a praise thing, but I think part of the reason the movie doesn't feel so dated is like nobody's wearing real 90s clothes in this movie. They're just wearing clothes. I think you could buy everything Pete Nessup wears at like Sears today.
Pete's wardrobe is really interesting. I actually thought it was kind of funny, but they gave the character a very specific style. He is wearing these coarse knit linen outfits in various shades of beige. And like it's established right away that that's his vibe. That's his thing. And then in the middle of the movie, he has to sort of get into the skydiver scene, and all the skydivers are wearing parachute pants and jumpsuits in bright neon colors. And that's maybe the only thing that dates it. But you're like, parachuters probably always wear that stuff. That's their...
Got to be ready to go at any moment.
Yeah, that's their world, is bright colored nylon fabric. So to meet them in the middle, he like continues to wear his beige linen pants, but has like a linen shirt that has some red stripes in it. And he has a funny hat. So I loved how the costume designer like made that shift in his character without him going fully over to nylon. They're like, no, Pete's going to be in linens from start to finish.
Except for that one scene where they're at the big barbecue before the 4th of July jump, and he gets into the brawl in the bathroom with some of Ty's crew.
Yes.
For whatever reason, I'm pretty sure that he's wearing like a red t-shirt tucked into his jeans with a brown leather jacket.
Okay.
He's dressed like Duke Nukem. That's legitimately Duke Nukem's outfit.
Yeah, why did they break the mold for that scene? You're right. And it didn't totally make sense, but I was engrossed by the action in that scene because that's
a great fight scene. I really like the fight choreography in this movie overall.
Yeah.
It's not, because I think Wesley Snipes could do like a bunch of spin kicks and flashy shit if he wanted to. He's, like you mentioned, a 5th degree black belt. But he plays Pete's fight scenes as like, this is a guy who knows how to fucking fight, but not necessarily is top of the line martial artist.
It's good.
He's trained in like a little bit more of a straightforward style than what Wesley Snipes practices in his real life.
He brings some authenticity to it. And the fights, like we said, he's not a Steven Seagal character who has to dominate and just flips guys with his little pinky one after another. Like he takes his blows and then he gets some good shots in, and it's fun fighting.
Yeah, it's like a John McClane thing where he wins the fights, but he doesn't come out of them unscathed, which is the sweet spot, I think. You want your hero to feel capable and like a badass, but also you want him to be in danger at times.
And that gets into that weird part of the movie that's almost taking us into Act 3, because the two teams are basically face to face when they get to DC for this event. And yet it's not clear, like they don't totally know that the other guys are literally the villains, but they kind of do. And then they start fighting in the bathroom. And it's like, are they still just rival skydivers, or are they actually like criminals versus heroes at this point?
I think they're still just rival skydivers in that scene, because what kicks it off is Swoop gift wrapping one of Ty's crew.
Yeah.
And he gift wrapped Ty's crew because they pulled whatever the little buddy, his chute, before he got in the plane. So he went flying.
Right.
So this is just like bullying and then retribution at this point. There's no motivation outside of, we should definitely not be nice to these guys because they're dicks.
Yeah. It's a funny turn into that third act where all of a sudden it's, oh no, those those are the guys, and here's their plan, and now it's time to take out guns and start doing real violence to each other.
Yeah, they're already like in the air when Pete figures out where they're going.
Oh, right.
Like, I think at least Ty's crew's already like on the plane, and then Pete has to round up the crew to go get Jess and save her. She gets thrown out of a plane.
Should we jump ahead to that third act and try to bring this home?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
It's the 4th of July in Washington, D.C., and all the best skydivers are gathered for the big group event. Jesse's team has some friction with another team of skydivers who turn out to be Ty's gang. Bad guys try to sabotage Jesse's parachute, but it ends up injuring a different teammate, leaving Pete to take over. Pete finally realizes Ty's plan was to use the event as cover to land his team atop the DEA building. When they realize that Jess has stowed away on Ty's plane to confront Ty for killing Jagger, Pete and the rest of the team take off after her. Pete rescues Jess out of midair, and the whole team lands on the roof of the DEA just minutes after Ty and his crew have gone inside. Inside the DEA building, Pete and his friends take out Ty's crew one at a time, alert the police, and foil the bad guys' plans. Then, in a big final fight, Pete tackles Ty and they both go out a high window. But Pete pulls his emergency chute while Ty falls to his death. Leedy is caught before he can escape, and it's all a happy ending. Not only has Pete defeated a criminal gang and avenged the death of his brother, but he's also made his bones in the high-flying world of elite skydiving.
Do you think he's going back to the Marshal Service after this, or do you think he's going to try to make his bones in the skydiving world?
Doesn't he have a comment like, I'll do skydiving again in 50 years or something?
I don't know. There's a hint that maybe him and Jess are going to be a thing.
Yeah,
so
they have some energy together.
I feel like if they start dating, he's gonna get back in that plane.
He still kind of hates it, though, because even on the final jump where he goes out the window with Ty, he lands his chute, but he kind of breaks his shin when he does it. So he's like, fuck, I hate skydiving. I'm never doing this again.
I did appreciate, though, that the movie never spells out some kind of romantic entanglement between Jess and Pete. They both have other stuff going on.
Yeah.
But, like, there's chemistry there. And it's a nice choice. It's a measured choice.
I like that, too, that there was no heavy-handed kiss at the end.
Kissing. Ick.
Yuck.
So you had some qualms with the 4th of July group jump.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the premise here, because we don't have to, like we said, we forgive every plot hole and weird thing that we can't understand in this. But to make this heist work, Ty's gang needs to go in at night to the top of a building in the middle of Washington, D.C., which is restricted airspace. And so the only way to do it is to get his crew to be part of this big 4th of July festival. And somehow they explain it that, the fireworks are going to start at night, and then we're going to jump out of planes and dive through the fireworks and the smoke. I was like, that doesn't make sense. And they never are able to show it on screen because it doesn't make sense visually. Like, how would you even, who's the crowd that's watching this, and how would you even know it was happening if you were looking at fireworks and people started falling through it?
It's like hiring a skywriter to write a proposal message for you. Like, don't take off until 1 a.m. No one's going to see it. So like either they don't jump near the fireworks and they're still in restricted airspace and they're going to get shot down, or they jump near the fireworks and literally everyone that would be gathered there is staring up at the sky and seeing them land on top of this building.
They do show the fireworks in the background of a lot of the outdoor shots. And that's one of the CGI things, or at least they were like compositing stuff. You can see some of the shots look kind of weird, but not bad. It works enough and it makes a nice backdrop, because even then 20 minutes later, they're fighting in this building and there's a big one-on-one fight between Wesley Snipes and Gary Busey. And you still see a skyline with fireworks out the window. So like, okay, this is fun in the way that action movies should have something big in the world going on in the background that sort of sets the stage. And this is kind of a good one, 4th of July.
I think Drop Zone would have been cool if while all this was going on, also Godzilla was there. But it wasn't like the main point of the movie.
He's like,
he's not even in the city they're in. He's just elsewhere. But like on all the TVs, like, man, this fucking Godzilla's out of control. He's destroying everything. He hasn't gotten to Florida yet, so we're okay. But
bit of a distraction, I guess.
I'm going to write that movie. Just a small indie drama, but in the background, a kaiju attack is happening.
Down with that.
I think Colossal kind of tried to do that with Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk about that one day. I already talked about how I love the fight choreography, but there's a couple cool kills that we need to single out here, because one, Jess is fighting Jagger's new girlfriend, Kara, played by Claire Stansfield. We talked off mic about this. Like, Jagger's got a type, huh?
He totally does.
Big hair, real defined cheekbones.
Yeah.
Super hot.
Hot, tough skydiver ladies. He's going through them. And they don't like each other. They kind of have to fight to the death.
Yeah. So they come across each other in the office, and Jess gets the upper hand, slams Kara's face into a copy machine. And then, of course, you get that gratuitous shot of 7 or 8 copies of her smashed face coming out of the machine.
You see it coming. You see that the bit is being queued up because there's almost a point where she pushes Jess's face onto the glass and then there's the reversal. But it's still fun. It gets a laugh and cool kill points. And at this point, the movie has become very diehard because they're inside a skyscraper and they're chasing terrorist bad guys on different floors and up and down elevator shafts, and they're knocking them off one at a time. And it's done well, though. It might be somewhat derivative at this point, but it's quality stuff.
Yeah, and I was enjoying these scenes in The Office, but I was starting to be like, oh, it's kind of losing the skydiving angle now that they're just in this. Now it's just like cops and robbers. But then they go up to the roof and they come up with a way to kill one of the bad guys in a skydivey way. That was pretty interesting.
Yes.
One of the good guys is hanging from a building, like on a rope. I think it's BTK. And the blonde asshole from Ty's crew, not Ty, the other one, is trying to push him off. And then I think it's Pete, right? Pete goes up on the roof to get him, or who ties the thing around his neck?
I think it's Swoop and BTK are the two good guys involved.
So Swoop ties the rope, the other side of the rope around the blonde guy's neck and then pulls his chute. So he's basically being choked by his own parachute because it's pulling against this rope that's anchored somewhere else.
Yes.
And it's hard to explain, but it's a really inventive kill in like a skydiving action thriller.
It's good. And actually the parachutes in this movie, you talked about how the other team humiliated the kid on the squad by pulling his parachute when he was on the ground. And I thought when you pull a parachute, there's no like explosive charge in there. If you weren't up in the air, it would just kind of sag to the ground. But in this movie, when you pull parachute on the ground, the fucking thing opens up. It like jets out.
I think it's
you.
Pressurized. I don't think it's like explosive, but I think it's a pressurized.
Is there some pressure in there? Okay. Yeah, these parachutes in this movie, at least, they shoot out pretty hard when you pull the rope and it strings him up, but it doesn't strangulate him. It breaks his neck because there's a little cracking sound and then he's just dead.
And I don't know if the drag would have been sufficient to break his neck. Like, it must have been a windy night up there.
It was the top of a building. You can imagine the wind catching that thing and pulling pretty hard on it. But there is some gratuitous neck breaking in this movie, as is a trope of 90s action movies, because that guy's neck cracks audibly on screen. And so does the guy that Pete's fighting in the stairwell. They're just slugging it out in the stairwell. And then they roll down a flight of stairs. And halfway down, you hear this crack noise and you get to the bottom and the guy's dead. It's like, oh, the classic neck break. Quick way to deal with a bad guy.
One of my favorite tweets from Vineyville. Sweet dreams, you piece of shit. I try to snap the prison guard's neck, but just make him look to the left very quickly. Because it's true. That was such a thing in 90s movies. If you just walked up behind anybody and made them look in another direction a little too fast, they would immediately die.
There's an awesome Key and Peele sketch about that with an action movie where it's all about neck breaking. It's fantastic.
I mean, MacGruber almost went there, but it was throat ripping.
He went with throat ripping. That was a nice creative twist that took it one step further.
A nice creative twist is what you need to rip a throat. So like, this is just another time for me to praise the creativity they put into the fights here. They feel visceral and I don't want to say real, but grounded, and they're staying on theme. It's just good stuff. It's just fun. It's a fun movie to watch.
It's physical, but then it's also silly because Pete and Ty wind up on either side of a desk and they're crouching, and like the look that Wesley Snipes gives you when he's crouching on one side of his console and he knows that the bad guy is like 2 feet away on the other side. It's just funny. And then they pop up and they do like a standoff face to face, and both their guns end up empty when they go to shoot the other guy.
I would love for a face off to happen that way, but the first guy to pull his trigger like still has a bullet. Think about how surprising that would be.
Yeah.
We've seen it with the second guy where the first guy's out, but the second guy still has one left. I just want to see that, because that's what they're going for. They're just standing there for a while, but then the first guy pulls the trigger and lo and behold, blows the other guy's head off. That was easy.
I'm glad I pulled the trigger. I didn't keep waiting.
Oh man, I've got so many well, I wouldn't call that a movie idea.
No, but you can use that scene in your movie.
My indie drama with Godzilla in the background.
And then Gary Busey gifts us with a beautiful 90s action movie death. He goes out the window. He has no parachute. And it's just a great close-up of him screaming as he plummets towards the ground and through the windshield of his henchman's truck. Pretty fun death.
Not just any henchman. That's Hot Rod Dunham, Ian. We talked about this.
We did. Comes around to Mickey Jones. He got in with the wrong gang and things don't end well.
All right. That was Drop Zone. Was there anything we missed that you wanted to go over?
That was a fun romp. I feel like we just kind of sailed through that.
Yeah, we blew through it, but let's check in on some of the key players, see what they got up to. So John Badham, I think I referred to him as a reliable Hollywood hand, but listen to this filmography he's got going for himself. Saturday Night Fever, War Games, Bird on a Wire, all big hits.
Yeah.
Short Circuit. This guy's got bangers.
Yeah, I mean, you can almost stop with Saturday Night Fever. That's like a legendary movie. And then stuff like War Games, but that does make him seem like a hand.
Yeah, like a hired hand.
Because he seems to be doing movies in all different kind of genres. Some of them end up being actiony and thrillery, but he's kind of done it all.
Yeah, you wouldn't watch Drop Zone and be like, this is the work of an auteur. Like, he doesn't have a signature style, really. He just directs things very capably and seems to have a good time doing it. But he did Drop Zone, which lost money, like we mentioned. And then he did the Johnny Depp bomb, Nick of Time, which I also remember on HBO quite a bit.
Okay.
That bombed even harder. That one did real bad. And then he made a straight to DVD Jason Patrick artwork forgery thriller called Incognito
Okay.
in like 98. That was his last movie, but he's done all types of TV directing up until retiring in 2018. So he worked pretty steadily. He might have just gotten over the movies, but like we said, that filmography, you cannot argue with it. And he's 83 now, so he's probably just enjoying retirement.
I looked at his list of his work, and he definitely just made a pivot to TV. It was more, like you said, hired hand work, but lots of great credits, just tons of good shows. I didn't look deeper to see like how many episodes on each of those shows he did, but he wasn't working on the outskirts of Hollywood. He was doing good TV for years and years.
Absolutely. We like him here unless we find out he's a dickhead. But
yeah, let's hope we don't find that out. So far, so good.
So mentioned, written by Peter Barsacchini. He got his start as a music journalist. He wrote Dance Fever in 1986, and then this was only his second movie. But then he wrote all the High School Musicals.
Wow.
Those movies that surely exist.
That's a successful pivot, because this also seems like kind of a work for hire for him, like you described it, is like skydivers came to him and like, you know how to write movies, right? He's like, yeah, let's do it.
Tony Griffin and Guy Manos. But we had rewrites done by a John Bishop, who, based on his filmography, only does rewrites.
Okay.
He did a rewrite on Clear and Present Danger, Beverly Hills Cop 3, and Primal.
Nice.
That's all I know about him. There's not a ton of information out there about Mr. John Bishop. Cool name, though. Sounds like an action hero.
And that's a good job. Somehow I think that would be like a dream job.
Just like a script doctor?
Yeah, script doctor. Those are good properties to like swoop in on and see what you can do.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about Wesley, our boy. His first appearance on this pod.
Yeah.
That's exciting because I'm a big Snipes guy. He's great in Demolition Man the year before this one. And then in 95, he'd star in To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
Okay.
And Money Train. That was with Woody Harrelson, if I'm remembering correctly. And in 96, he'd star in future episode The Fan. Stay tuned for that one coming soon. And Murder at 1600, which I also remember really enjoying.
Okay.
1600 being the White House, if you guys didn't know.
I think that's another twin film too. There was another White House movie that year.
That's right. Holy shit. Even The Fan might be a twin film now that I think about it, but
oh man,
there was definitely another one set at an all-star game or something.
Okay.
Around this time. But then 98 saw him star in U.S. Marshals, which once again was on HBO a lot, and I fucking loved it. It's a spinoff of The Fugitive.
Oh.
So like the U.S. Marshal gang is all the same, but there's no Harrison Ford, and Snipes now is the fugitive, as it were.
Okay, cool.
Robert Downey Jr. when he was like in his exile, but they threw him a bone and he fucking knocks this like sleazy FBI guy out of the park. He's really good in it. Yeah, I can't say it's not a bad movie. I haven't seen it in 20 years, but I'm very tempted to watch it in the near future and see if it holds up. Actually, we could just do a Snipes run. I bet U.S. Marshals lost money. Let's see.
It sounds very intriguing.
No, it didn't lose money. It made money.
Oh.
It made $102 million on a same budget as Drop Zone, but made $40 million more.
All right. Wesley's like, hands off, buddies.
But 1998 was not just the U.S. Marshals year. It was the year he'd take on his most iconic role, Blade.
Yeah.
Or Nino Brown. I don't know. Depends how old you are. He'd played Blade twice more. But in the third movie, Blade Trinity, he was reportedly quite an asshole on set. Wouldn't come out of his trailer, just smoked weed all day, would only communicate to the director, which I think was David S. Goyer. He would only communicate with the director through Post-it notes. He would not speak to him.
Whoa.
He wanted to be addressed only as Blade, not as Wesley or Mr. Snipes.
Damn.
He refused to open his eyes for one scene. It was like the ending scene where he's supposed to come back to life, but he wouldn't do it. So they had to CGI eyes on him.
Oh man, I gotta watch this. He sounds like he's definitely gone over the edge here.
I'll see if we can find the Patton Oswalt stand-up bit about this, because Patton Oswalt was in Blade Trinity, so he was on set for all this. He goes into it in great detail.
Oh man,
it's fucking hilarious.
What a guy to have there to document that moment in history. Who could be better?
But then he was starting to get a reputation to be a bit of a diva on set, and then it was around this time I think his tax troubles really came to light. He had just forgotten to pay taxes forever.
Was he one of those people who decided that he didn't believe the IRS existed, or was that somebody else?
I never heard that side of it, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Or was that?
No, you were right. He was, all right, so willfully failing to file millions of dollars worth of past tax returns. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined $5 million.
Damn.
He tried various defenses to avoid paying taxes, such as claiming that the IRS was illegitimate, that he was a non-resident alien, and that he had received bad information from his advisors.
I hate that.
He was also charged with fraud and conspiracy. He pleaded not guilty, but he was found guilty. guilty. Non-resident alien. He's from Orlando. I'm just very confused by that. But he still acted throughout the late 90s and the aughts, but it wasn't in the caliber of movies we had kind of gotten used to associating with Mr. Snipes. But in the past few years, he's been in some good stuff. He was in Chirac, Dolomite Is My Name, Coming to America, the number 2,
Right.
and the TV show True Story, which is about Kevin Hart. It's a Kevin Hart show. I don't know. I didn't even hear about it till I was researching this, but it sounds interesting.
Okay.
And he has a hilarious cameo in the fantastic show on FX, What We Do in the Shadows.
You mentioned that. I got to see
Just
that.
one of my favorite shows on television, and he's really funny. He's in one episode, and he's great. I mentioned Yancy Butler. She worked steadily, but never became a star. We talked about Witchblade. Check
Right.
those out if you were a horny 13-year-old in 1999 like I was. She was in the Kick-Ass movies, both the Kick-Ass movies, so like she was
Oh.
still getting some big Hollywood roles
I
at that
didn't
time.
realize that. Okay.
Still working, just like I said, smaller projects, smaller roles, not quite a breakout star, which is a shame because she's got charisma in this movie.
Yeah.
I found myself really drawn to her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go over Busey because we just did Big Wednesday and we all know
Right.
what Gary Busey's up to. But let's talk about Michael Jeter a little bit because he unfortunately passed in 2003
Oh.
after complications from an epileptic seizure. He was only 50, but he had disclosed that he was HIV positive in 1997, though it never really had a negative impact on his health. He was able to stay
I see.
healthy in spite of that. You know him, even if you don't know him. He's one of those
Yeah.
guys. He was in Mouse Hunt, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, The Green Mile. I first got familiar with him aside from Drop Zone in Jurassic Park 3. He's got a meaty role as a mercenary in that movie, which
Oh, okay.
Michael Jeter as a mercenary goes about as well for him on an island full of dinosaurs as you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm picturing it.
And then his last film role was in The Polar Express. It was just a voice role, but obviously they used his likeness as well for the character because they did that with everyone else. And that was released posthumously, though.
Wow, it's sad to know. I didn't know he was no longer with us.
I know. I was surprised. But I was wondering when I was watching this, like, why haven't I seen him in more stuff?
Because, yeah,
That's-
while he was around, he worked a lot.
but sadly passed away. So that's Drop Zone. But we've got some big news to drop on the, not news, I guess, if you just follow along with the linear order of numbers, you'd probably figure it out. But next week's our 100th episode.
Wow, look at us. Who would have thought?
We made it.
Well, we haven't made it yet.
Oh,
we
right.
got a big one to get through.
We got a mountain to climb, or more like a prairie to tame. We're doing the bomb. I think if you say bombs in regards to movies, if you say it to a random person, they'll probably say like John Carter because it's more recent. But if you say it to someone who is a student of film to some degree, they're going to say Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, it's right up there.
It's kind of like the definitive failure in Hollywood. But like so many of the movies we've talked about, it's getting a lot of praise, especially after Michael Cimino. Like it was already getting a big reevaluation while Michael Cimino was with us. And then once he died, I feel like it became very in vogue to be like, actually, Heaven's Gate rules. And people even went back to some of his later movies that were objectively considered bad at the time. And were like, actually, this is good too. And I was like, all right. But I'm really excited to take a look at Heaven's Gate and see where it falls on the scale of, is this just a Terrence Malick wannabe, ponderous, meandering, long ass Western, or is this going to be something that actually has a narrative value?
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. I'll be honest. I'm going into it with a little bit of trepidation. Like, holy shit, is this going to be a slog? But I'm hoping and I'm determined to try to discover something to appreciate and admire and talk about with enthusiasm next week.
You will 100% appreciate the cinematography and the vistas that you'll get from Heaven's Gate.
Cool.
So there's always that if all else fails. But we got Chris Christopherson playing one of the leads, famously Blade's sidekick Whistler.
Oh, look at that. We're linking them up.
Linking them up. We're doing the Blade franchise month. No, all actors that have appeared in Blade. I could probably make that work.
We could swing it if we had to.
Yeah. So tune in next week for Heaven's Gate. That's going to be exciting. It's our 100th one. It's a big one. I just finished reading the Michael Cimino book. Not just finished. I finished like a month and a half ago, but
Yeah.
still exciting.
Yeah, bring us some good tidbits out of that.
You know I will. And thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the pod if you can. You can email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter @blastzonepod while Twitter still exists. As of this recording, it does. I wouldn't hold my breath.
Good luck.
We're not paying for the blue check. So
No.
if you don't see our tweets anymore, they're still out there. It's just
We're just as verified as we've always been. Just not at all.
all right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.